Hey guys, VaulSC here. Hope that you're having a good week. So, on the internet, there are a lot of different podcasts about Infinity the Game by Corvus Belli. One such podcast is called Whip 12, and recently the guys from Whip 12 did an episode about a new sectorial for Infinity the Game. And the thing about the sectorial, unannounced yet, that is presumably coming out from Corvus Belli soon, the thing about the sectorial is that it was going to be about the Defiance board game that was on Kickstarter a long time ago. And just as a reminder, that's the Kickstarter where you form this little band of adventurers who are Infinity characters, and you go into a spaceship, dungeon crawler style, fighting against the Shazvasti. It was a big thing, and they made the profiles or the characters from this board game into profiles for Infinity. So you had Jazz and Billy playable in Nomads, and you had Caden First Strike for Ariadne, etc., etc. And the idea is that this new sectorial was going to bring those characters together into the same faction and have them as part of an O12 faction where you can actually play as their little team in the same way that Foreign Company brings together like the A team, you know, the characters for Hannibal and Valkyrie and the rest from Aristia. Now I haven't watched I haven't listened to the podcast myself, but a bunch of people did, and it turned out later on, confirmed by Hellois on the Walker forum or something like that, that this is just it's a fake. It's not actually a real sectorial. And what happened is that there were a few people who were disappointed to hear that. I don't want to say that it was a big backlash or anything, because I really don't think it was that. There were a few people who were mildly disappointed because they'd sort of listened to that thinking that this was a real thing, and maybe they'd gone on to discuss that with their friends, make posts about it in public places, only for it to be found out that this was just like a joke, like just a troll thing all along. And in this video that I'm making right now, I just want to sort of make a little bit of a commentary on that, and then after I've discussed the Defiance sectorial situation, I want to tell you about an actual real sectorial coming out from Corvus Belli in the near future, and then at the end of the video I'm just going to be talking about Infinity sectorials in general and what we think of them and what we might expect from them or want from them in the future. A little bit of wish listing there. Okay, so with this podcast thing about the new Defiance sectorial, which turned out to be a fake, I can understand why a few people aren't too happy about that. First of all, they listen to a podcast that is normally very serious, and they're expecting serious, normal Infinity news. They're investing in themselves emotionally, and then it goes on to find out that they were just, essentially trolling. They're making fun of this thing, and that can make people feel like they were led on, and they were sort of misled, and they were made to feel foolish. And I think that nobody really likes to feel foolish. I must admit, wholeheartedly, that last year I did something similar. I did get somebody to leak a fake screenshot of the O12 cop car, the Rapid Enforcement Cruiser, onto Facebook and somewhere else, and that was not obviously a real unit. It was just a stunt to promote my YouTube show, Table Game Fun Times. I had episode number 5 coming out like 24 hours later, and that episode was about how, the fictional characters of the episode come across this new profile for Infinity the Game, and none of it is real. The thing is that cop car is actually playable in my Infinity tournaments, though, and there's a real unit for it that you can use if you want to, but it's not official. And in the same way, there were a few people who sort of interacted with that and made posts about it, and then got a little bit annoyed that, the stuff coming out was just trolling and not real. And I do want to say, if anybody genuinely felt upset or hurt or just annoyed with me because of that, then I am sorry. I don't intend to make people feel unhappy in that way. And I'm sure that the guys who record Whip 12 aren't out maliciously to, ruin anybody's day. So I feel bad for people who really, just felt some sort of disappointment or being upset about that kind of thing. But the main thing that I want to take away from this kind of situation in the scenario is that I also don't want to feel like people who make content for Infinity become afraid or apprehensive about attempting humor and coming up with jokes and troll ideas and pranks and stuff like that, for fear that there might actually be a backlash and they would sort of lose some clout or lose some respect from the community if they do that. I think that these kinds of jokes are entertaining and fun, and for the most part relatively harmless. So I don't think it's actually the worst thing in the world to pretend that Corvus Belli's released something when they haven't. Sure, by all means be careful about it, and do it in a measured way. And if you have any doubt about the effects that you're going to cause, then you could always just say, hey, look, disclaimer, this thing is a joke, okay? But yeah, it was fun. Now, the other topic here, the other part of this that I want to sort of cover, it's just the idea in general that people initially did think it was a serious sectorial, and let's just talk about why people would have had that reaction to something that might otherwise have seemed like a joke, and that is because Corvus Belli themselves have a history of doing some dumb shit. They started out by incorporating a lot of Aristaya characters as profiles in Infinity the game, and people found that very tolerable. In fact, it's actually quite good that we've got Mushashi and Lei Gong and Major Luna, and these are all good, normal, balanced profiles. They kind of fit with Infinity. Aristaya is sort of in the same Infinity universe, and that brought quite a lot to the game of Infinity. But then when we had Defiance, it was very hit and miss. Jazz and Billy kind of wrecked internal balance of Nomads to some extent. Like, nobody really agrees that it's good that unit is so undercosted. Then you've got a character like Uma Sorensen, which started out as a totally unusable trash tier character. It's gotten better, but it's still a pretty bad character. The Yu Ching one, Qian Gao, or how he pronounces his name, is absolutely awful. And a lot of these characters aren't really needed. It's just a matter of Corvus Belli going, okay, we'll throw a profile into that other system and see what sticks and see if it can make us some more money. It's done very thoughtlessly and carelessly. And then, of course, you had Tag Raid, where it's like, what are you guys doing? You've got a situation where Aleph players and Pan-Oceania players are having to include Diggers and Beast Hunters or whatever in their list just to kind of stay competitive. People disagree with me on that point, by the way. Not everybody agrees that Diggers need to be in a lot of lists, but I certainly do. But I think most people agree that the tag raid profiles shouldn't just proliferate all of the factions, right? They should just be in one sectorial or something like that. So this is why when you hear on a podcast that they're about to sort of just throw the Defiance profiles into an O12 sectorial, it's believable, not because it would be a good idea, but because Corvus Belli has a history and precedent of doing this kind of thing. And I think a lot of people sort of switched off when they heard that and got, oh, okay, not this again. Let me just go back to painting my White Banner miniatures so I can play against my Ariadne opponent next week, and just I don't really care about what the Corvus Belli are doing, and nobody sort of just goes, hey, I think this looks fake, because it doesn't really look that fake given all the stuff that Corvus Belli have done. So I do want to point that out, that Corvus Belli have sort of taken a hit to their credibility, really, in terms of being competent game designers over the years because of some of the decisions they've made with their releases. They haven't been particularly thoughtful. What I would be doing if I was in charge of that company, in charge of releasing these profiles and these products, is I'd go, right, if people want to use these profiles, great, fine, we'll put them in a couple of mercenary sectorials, but for the main factions, Vanilla and Pan-Oceania and Yu Ching, what we're going to do is we're going to look at the iconic units that are really characterful and represent those factions and are only in those factions, and make them the good, powerful units. So you have the Asura, make that into a powerful unit. The Aquila Guard, make that into a powerful unit, and make those the more common units that you see in factions, because that's what gives them their identity, right? So that's how we're going to go there. All right, so on to the next segment of this video, where we have some news. Unlike the Defiance sectorial, I am going to announce a brand new sectorial for O12 that is coming out, that is real, definitely not fake, for Infinity the game, and it is Crow 12, the new sectorial for O12 based on the characters from Warcrow Adventures. Let's dive into it and look at some spoilers. Not everything is ready yet, but let me show you what we have got. Where are we? Okay, we have a Darach. I don't know how to pronounce his name. He is the first spoiler champion from the Crow 12 sectorial. Let's just have a bit of a zoom in on him. So, he is a medium infantry. All right, look at some stats. Now, he's the guy with the bow, so we'd expect him to be very shooty. Right off the bat, he has BS attack guided, and that makes me imagine the kind of character that is able to just fire his bow in the air, and the arrow just lands on an enemy trooper, kind of like Legolas, in Lord of the Rings. Every time he fires a bow, it hits somebody in the eye, or an arrow, I should say. And checking out his tactical bow, it is +2 burst. I don't know if you can use the burst bonus for guided. I can't remember whether you're allowed to or not, but either way, I mean, it seems like he's going to be pretty lethal in the shooting game. TAC bows have, I think, double action ammunition. So pretty lethal, and BS-15, of course, I wouldn't expect anything less from such a sharpshooter. Other stats look pretty normal. NWI, 1 wound, immunity shock, just typical Corvus Belli sort of stuff there. He can be your lieutenant though, +1 command token and Strategos level 1. Seems like the leader of the party. I don't really get into Warcrow Adventures. I got given the box set for the prototype for YouTube, but I didn't really absorb all of the rules there, so I didn't really pick up on whether he's meant to be an actual leadership type character. But apparently he is, because look at that. Lieutenant with +1 command token right there. 28 points, not bad. For these sort of stats, 28 points, I mean, it is a lot. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in Infinity which is very good for very cheap. But I think if you can get the guided tack bow stuff working, this guy does look pretty brutal. Oh, equipment, Lucky Acorn. What does that do? I think I had a screenshot for that as well. Units equipped with the Lucky Acorn apply the effects of a critical hit to all enemy troopers when making guided attacks. How is that a thing? So, if you roll a crit for your shot, you hit all enemy troopers? What? When a trooper with a Lucky Acorn declares any skill that involves planting an oak tree, they are immune to the effects of bad luck until the end of the order. Oh, okay. Well, I haven't seen everything from the Sectorial yet, so we're going to have to speculate on what planting an oak tree actually is. That might be a new mechanic in the game soon, so we'll check that out. If a trooper with this equipment acquires any other acorn, it is considered lucky automatically. Oh, okay. So there's some sort of system behind there about the acquisition of acorns. Very, very good. Okay, so that is Darak. Let us move on to, who else do we have here? Ludovine Corbin, another Crow 12 champion. And she has, she's religious, that sort of makes sense. She seems a bit like a cleric kind of character. Mimetism -3, always good. Stats seem like kind of just above light infantry kind of stuff. She's Doctor +3, so I guess she's the healer of the party. That makes sense. When you're going into a dungeon, you need some sort of stability and sort of attrition kind of going on there. Some sustainability, as it were. Flash Pulse, no gun though, just a medikit and DACCW with a CC20. She seems like she's quite a lot weaker than Darak, but only 18 points, so that's not bad. A lot of doctors in the game are around about the 14 points mark, so what she's getting for that additional 4 points, I should say, is the Mimetism, Whip 15, Doctor +3, that kind of thing. So yeah, it seems pretty average as far as troopers go, but I think you kind of probably want to have her in the party there just to keep the cost of the Link team low and have some way of healing up your friends. Okay, let's move on to Zoka Izamun. She was the first released Crow 12 Warcraft Adventures character. This is now a Crow 12 champion. I like the look of her. It looks like she does have 2 states because of transmutation, and she's a heavy infantry, so that seems quite cool. You take a wound and you drop down to the second level, so she effectively has 2 wounds, and look at that, only 14 points for that cheaper profile, and it does have some awesome stuff. Double chain rifle, grenades, looking really good. Fizz 13 with grenades, not bad. And booty as well, look at that. So you roll on the booty chart, you could potentially get armor going up to 7, you could have mimetism -6, you could have like the 8-4 speed or whatever it is. HMG, this is a really good loadout to have booty on because of being only 14 points, and being able to link with the rest of the Crow 12 champions is really good. She can take a hit from the front, be that entry point in, clear a few mines, very good at trading for an enemy model, and there are going to be some like martial arts specialists out there who are really going to be crying when she rolls into close combat with them, because she's got that natural born warrior and +1 burst on the close combat attacks. So really brutal thing. Can't believe that Corvus Belli would bring something like this into the game. Does seem a little bit overpowered, but power creep. So what are you going to do? Alrighty, next we have Naira Kaladrin, another Crow 12 champion. She, from the looks of Warcraft Adventures, seems more like the spellcaster. So she's got albedo, helps to avoid a few of those MSV2 units on the first round, or MSV of any kind, to be honest. She does have Hacking Device Plus, and what's this? Upgrade Floodlight. We haven't seen that in the game yet, and I believe I have a little bit of a spoiler for what Floodlight does. So Floodlight is similar to Spotlight, But the thing about it is that a success causes all enemy troopers to enter targeted state, placing a targeted state token by them. Wow. Okay, and the range of the program's the entire table. That's interesting. One thing we've been finding with Infinity in general is that it's quite difficult to get. It's quite difficult to get Spotlight off. There's no way of extending your hacker's hacking area. You've got to get the hacker right up close to the enemy model to get Spotlight happening, don't you? So Floodlight makes that a lot easier by just going, okay, pass the willpower check. Your opponents haven't really reset. I mean, I guess technically with the range being the entire table, all enemy models have to reset. But if it works, then all of them are spotlit, or targeted, I should say. And if you get a crit, it... I think I've got this around the wrong way. So a crit, you have to crit to get them all targeted. It's either or. So crit does both. So you only need to pass. You don't need to crit technically with this wording. So a success causes everyone to go into targeted state, meaning that if you have a guided missile launcher in your faction, it's just going to be able to spend the rest of the turn's orders blasting. Probably what I'd recommend with Crow 12 is to take Dirac, obviously, because of his guided fire with his tack bow. Remember, you can have a maximum 5 shots with that. And then, so long as your Sectorial allows it, hopefully Crow 12 have a missile launcher bot as well. So you take Dirac and the missile launcher bot, and both of them shoot 5 orders shots. Probably want to have the Crow 12 champion team in one group, and the missile bot in the secondary group, and then your first activation is just with Naira. Make sure everybody gets targeted, and then just five arrows with Dirac. His range might be a bit limited with attack bow, but then after he's shot his shots, you shoot the missile bot, and then it's just game over for your opponent. So pretty strong combo. Naira seems really, really good. And then the last one here, we have Ormuk, the Crow 12 champion. This guy seems like a real beast. Some really beefy CC stats there. CC 24, Martial Arts Level 3, Berserk +3, Natural Born Warrior, all in the same profile, and he's got an explosive close combat weapon. Cannot believe that Corvus Belli would put something in the game that's this strong at close combat for just 23 points. But it's actually not that surprising when you think about it. There's already some pretty crazy stuff out there. Now, he doesn't have a gun, so I think that's why you only pay 23 points for him. In the same way that, you have like a Polaris Bear Pod, that's going to not be able to shoot across the board with the combi rifle. Similar thing with Ormuk. I guess you can bring him along with the Link team, and then he can just bash whoever gets too close. Interestingly, here's a bone pendant, so we're just going to see if we have a screenshot of that. So here we go, bone pendant. During the reactive turn, the bearer of the bone pendant causes the effects of critical hits on them to instead be applied to all active models. And I think the wording of that means that an active model is the one that is having the order spent on it. So if it's your turn and you activate your Fusilier with a combi rifle and you shoot Ormuk and you score 1 crit, 1 miss, and 1 hit, then the hit would be applied to Ormuk. The critical hit would actually apply damage to the Fusilier that's shooting, and the miss wouldn't be counted. So it says here, during the active turn, the bearer of the bone pendant causes any critical hits against them as misses for all purposes. So in that example, the Fusilier hits once, crits once, and misses once. Then the crit doesn't affect Ormuk, only that 1 hit does, and then the Fusilier also takes a hit. So it's a very good passive ability for defending. Ormuk could charge into like the deployment zone where there's all sorts of enemy models shooting. Presumably they've survived the barrage of missiles from Dirac and the missile bot from Floodlight. But Ormuk is really good at just punishing and trading, and if they try and stop him, they may get hit themselves, and that seems pretty nasty. Lastly, victims of the power of the bone amulet immediately enter the boned state. They become boned. So let's just see what that does. Bone state. The trooper becomes a victim of the bone pendant. Troopers in the state no longer believe in balance or fair play. And they are correct. Everything carries on normally, but this trooper isn't really happy about any of it. Once you are boned, that's it for you. You're just boned now. Live with it, or more likely, die with it. Interesting thing there. We haven't seen all of the Crow 12 rules yet. There may be more stuff in the mechanics about this, which sort of puts into a bit more context, but it does seem to make sense. Ormuk, obviously very powerful trooper. What you're likely to be doing is forming like a 5-man link team with all 5 Crow 12 characters. They may be allowed to wildcard or link with other stuff. I'd like to see some smoke in there, maybe something a bit cheaper, something with a gun, because none of them are really shooty, except for Dirac. I think they're sort of relying on close combat stuff or the Guide of Fire stuff. A lot of NA2 sectorials and Crow 12 sectorials can sort of put in a trooper, maybe like a Psychop with a multi-marksman rifle or something cool like that. It'd be great to see like an Omega HMG. Yeah. So that is it for the commentary on Crow 12. Hopefully have some more stuff from you in future for Crow 12. Moving on, let us now talk about Infinity the Game and actual sectorials that we already have. So, my feeling about Infinity the Game N4 right now, with vanilla factions and sectorials as they stand, is that I'm not really that excited about seeing lots of more like new sectorials from Corvus Belli, because we have so many of them, and most people would agree that it's just really a matter of maintaining and fixing existing sectorials and going deeper into them and making them better and more diverse. We don't really need us to be sort of bloating the whole system with more new stuff, because if you make the new rules for a sectorial really radical, then it sort of hurts game balance. But if you make them too much like other sectorials, it just weakens and dilutes and waters down the diversity, right? So here's my main wish list for sectorial changes. I think that what they ought to do with existing sectorials is, first of all, just look through all of the link formation rules and balance them down a bit better. What they initially did with the new link team rules is they tried to address linked teams, and they did that very inconsistently. So on one hand you have Varuna, where you can't really take a pure linked team of Fusiliers that involves a Kamau sniper, but in Cosmoflot you can take a bunch of Rockets with a Volkolak missile launcher, and it counts as a pure link team for the full Ballistic Skill +3 bonus. And then Morats, for example, you can throw in a Kaitok, you can throw in a Yaugat sniper with +1 burst, and it's all, all fair game, it's all pure link. What I would do if I was Corvus Belli is I would just go through all of the link team formation rules and make it fairer and more consistent right across the board, so that it becomes very, very hard to create a pure link team without putting like 5 of the same exact model there. So if you're going to have a Govard link team, to make it pure, you have to have 5 Govards there. The exception should really only be stuff like the Diaphos characters, where you have a named character that, according to the fluff, is actually one of those kinds of troopers. So you have somebody like Lupe Balboa, I think she's like an Alguacile, or however you pronounce that name. Yuriko Oda is probably a better example. Kaisotsu, she can go in with Kaisotsu, so that's a pure link team. That's sort of how it should be. And if you really want to throw in, your Orc Trooper in along with a bunch of Fusiliers, you're not a pure link team, but you can still do it for the sake of variety, right? So there should definitely be more options. All the sectorials should have more Haris options and things like that, especially like QK. They were the first ones to have that rule, and now they sort of only have one Haris and everybody else has got multiple Haris. Just give people more options for creating link teams in general, but don't make them too powerful, right? So that's really what you should be doing. I think a lot of people would agree that if you just take a 5-man team of Fusiliers for the sake of the bonuses, that's not really an efficient way of playing Infinity N4. What I would like to see is some pure like rules bonuses which get applied to those kinds of teams to bring them up to sort of viability. In the same way that when they brought out Morats, they have a rule that applies if you take this particular like a type of link team, like having jungle terrain ability, for example. What it could be something like, imagine if you take if you're playing like White Banner and you take only Zanshis and it's absolutely pure Zanshis, then they get rerolls on button pressing for their specialists, even if their specialist isn't their type of specialist for that mission, or maybe they count as double points for the purpose of securing quadrants, like zones, so you have more incentivization to stand them up and move them around the table. Stuff like that could go a long way to making the game a little bit more interesting, and we see a little bit more versatility and variety in terms of the link teams actually on the table. That could be pretty cool. Signature characters, I think that having a sectorial like JSA, where that's the only sectorial where you can play Shinobu, That makes the sectorial interesting. That's why you play it. The idea of having McMurrah spread out in all these different factions seems a bit silly to me. He should really only be in one or at most two sectorials. You don't really want to sort of flip him around like that. I think every sectorial should have at least one character or loadout that only they have. And the way you can do that is you can have, okay, Sun Tze, he's in Vanilla Yu Cheng, leave him there, that's fine, he's also in ISS, but let's say if you play him in ISS, he has an additional loadout which is interesting and distinct and is only available to ISS, and that helps to make the sectorial a little bit more flavorful and a bit more characterful and a little bit more distinct from vanilla, and that's sort of what you're going for. I really like the idea of splitting those loadouts a lot, you know. Even for just base troopers, like you have a bunch of different dakinis, and then in OSS they have a special dakini with a special loadout that you can't take in vanilla or like an O12 or something, and that really helps to make the units more interesting for a specific sectorial. The other thing is availability. I think a lot of people agree that vanilla factions in general could do with a bit of a tone down in terms of the availability of some of the units. It could be something really basic, like saying, okay, if you play vanilla, you can have at maximum one flash bot, one TR bot, and one sensor bot, but the sectorial version can have a couple. Maybe that should probably apply more to the actual units, though. Some of the stuff that you see spammed in the vanilla factions should really be coming right down. Like if you say vanilla combined army can take at most 2 tiger creatures, but with Shaz Fasti it's 8. That kind of thing in general does help to solve the balance issue between vanilla and sectorials a little bit more. And it makes sectorials a little bit more interesting. So you go to Shaz Fasti because, well, you could take 4 Shroudeds. But in vanilla, okay, you only take 1, so that gives you a bit more of a reason to play a sectorial. And lastly, one of my favorite wishlist ideas is the idea of carefully, and I stress carefully, raising the unit cap for some sectorials. So all vanilla factions, maximum 15 troopers as usual. Some sectorials, still 15 troopers, but a few of the sectorials could go up to 16 or 17. For example, you play ISS. That's a faction based around, the possibility of having a lot of Guangxi. I'm not sure how to pronounce that name. Having that lifted to 17 wouldn't break the game, it wouldn't make them overpowered, but allows you to field that 8, Guangxi sort of list a little bit more credibly and viably. Some factions like French Ariadna and USARF, these are not considered to be ball-busting, top-of-the-meta kind of sectorials, so raising them to 16 or 17 troopers maximum would allow more versatility and variety in the list you can build for them, makes them slightly more competitive, but doesn't shoot them to the top of the rankings. So I think players would almost universally accept that kind of thing and be happy with that kind of thing. You could even make the cap tied to the inclusion of certain named characters, but I don't even think you need to do that. Just carefully work your way through some of the sectorials, make some of them a little bit more, a little bit larger with the unit cap, and just make sure that when you're doing that for a sectorial, don't pick a sectorial that already has tons of additional orders in the terms of tactical awareness and NCO and stuff like that, because you don't want to have too many orders being spent during the turn. It just makes the game really, really long. So we don't really want that. Cool, so those are my ideas for sectorials. Hopefully Corvus Belli do push the game forward in a good way over the next year in 2023. Really looking forward to seeing some more from Crow 12. And yeah, we will not be seeing a defined sectorial, unfortunately. But yeah, you like this video, give me a like, give me a subscribe, talk to me in my Discord. All the links are in the description down below.